There are people who want to give to me with their touch. And by that, I mean like offer me a nice neck rub or really feel my scalp or be gentle if they're going to touch my breasts. And then there's people who just want to take, which is, feels like scratching or just like random movement of your hands and you're not even feeling it. Some people will just start like humping the air to where it's like, okay, obviously you have a lot of energy and there's a disconnect because that's not what is happening right now. So I think it's also just being aware of like where your client is at. And if they are patiently receiving the touch, I feel a lot better about, providing the touch. But if they're thrashing around or arguing with me or feel like they're trying to get away from it, then I'm like, okay, do you even like this?
Welcome to the Somatic Pleasure Podcast, where the body is the teacher and sensation is the path. I'm your host, James Hummocky. This is a space where breath slows, skin listens, and we enter the raw, unfiltered currency of intimacy, desire, and embodied truth. This space isn't sanitized, it's real. Some of what we touch on may be explicit and not suitable for children. So, if you're ready to feel all of it, come on in. Hey there, welcome back to the Somatic Pleasure Podcast. And today I have a very special guest. I guess every one of my guests are very special to me because I people that are interesting that I want to talk to, and I hope you want to hear about what they have to say. This is Elle Stanger, and she's from Portland, and she is ASEC certified sexuality educator, and she's an advocate for the decriminalization of sex work and for harm reduction. She works with, she's the co-president of the, let me get this right, the Oregon Safer Workers Coalition. And we'll be talking more about the work that she does there. And so let's just get right into it. Elle, thank you for being here this is a Wednesday morning, yeah.
It is Wednesday, my dudes, and everyone else. Hi, James. Thanks for having me. That's quite mouthfuls. Yes, I have a lot of energy and ADHD and a hard time saying no to fun projects that I believe in. So, my work centers around harm reduction for people who are having sex or engaging sexually with themselves, with others, for fun, for
Mhm.
money. And I come to this as someone who has been started as an online nude model in 2005 and fell in love with strip club work after thinking it would be like a part-time thing until I went back into retail and finished college. And then when I was able to and interested, and due to economic necessity, I branched out into so many types of sex work. I'm aging into dominatrix, I like to say. I do phone
Love it.
sex, right? Porn making, webcam. I've dabbled in escorting, kinds of fetish things, stuff that is actually really difficult to describe briefly. So I've been doing all of this for 10, 15, 20 years. And then about partway through, one of my other really smart consensual perverted friends said, you should go into some kind of formal training for this because you
Mhm.
obviously really believe in sex and sexuality. It's my special interest.
Mhm.
So all my work really centers around people are gonna fuck, they're gonna hump, they're gonna want to touch and talk. How can we make it better for everyone? More lucrative, safer for everyone. Because even if you find yourself here and you hate pornography, like for some reason you've made it this far, but you really hate, erotic media or whatever, I'm going to tell you, even if you don't like it because of legitimate concerns, traumas, issues about some aspects of porn, trying to stamp it out criminalize it, make it not exist, punish people for engaging, actually creates more problems and makes it harder for victims to get support and help that they need. So I spend a lot of time giving examples to how and why. So thank you for having me.
Well, I mean, that's that place where we want to repress and suppress and criminalize, and we've shown over and over through history, prohibition and the war on drugs, and all of these different ways we've tried to moralize human behavior and create laws and regulations around it. But I love what you're saying there, wanting to make it safer. And part of that safer piece is education. And I know you're an educator. You've already said it. I've read your your bios and your websites. And so, what do you think? Well, where do you see education coming into that, as far as both creating a safer space and helping people to come more in touch with their eroticism, their erotic power, their authority, intelligence, those kinds of things?
So, a lot of times, what people need is information in order to address a concern or find out that something actually isn't a concern at all. And that could be, let's just think of simple sexual health. Some people out there have been told that because they have discharge that comes out of their body, their vagina or their penis, discharge or smegma or whatever you call it, that there's something wrong with them. There was actually an internet challenge, like the Clean Undies challenge or whatever, where people were
Oh,
saying
wow.
that they didn't have discharge at all,
Wow.
which is not realistic and not the case, So like, or I don't know if you remember this from when we were kids or teenagers, but some people said if you didn't want to get pregnant, you should douche with Mountain Dew.
What? No way.
So
I have not heard that one.
that's good. That's good. Maybe that one's dying off with some of us, but
That's crazy.
so even like I notice for myself as someone who's been having sex as an informed person for like 20 something years, like as informed as we can be because science
Mhm.
changes all the time. But I notice if I don't wash my hands or my partner doesn't wash their hands before they touch my genitals, I'm going to experience irritation, either in the form of bacterial vaginosis or a yeast infection, maybe a UTI. And so a lot of people who have a sexual interaction and simply don't remember to wash their hands, when they feel symptomatic or get a bacterial infection or an issue shortly after, they might feel that they did something wrong,
Mhm.
shame about it, confusion. How do you, like, what do I do for this? What did this person give me? I got my first UTI in about 12 years a couple weeks ago, and I knew why. I'd had a lot of rough sex with a person I don't have it with very often. And also there was like a few like objects involved, which were pretty clean. But when I got a UTI, I was like, I'm not surprised. I
Right.
luckily knew what was happening when it hurt to urinate and there was blood in there. I knew what to look up and I knew to call my doctor and I knew that I could get antibiotics, take them for 5 days, tell the person I had sex with, and it's fine. Now we know more. But for some people, that would be a very deeply shameful, confusing, scary, blaming experience. And
Mhm.
we really just need more information to avoid things that are really common, but actually pretty uncomfortable that a lot of people are dealing with all the time.
Well, doesn't that go back to that place where, we live in a culture that um, has had a lot of effort to try to suppress our erotic natures, our sexual selves, our understanding. And so you have things like a lack of education for young people. You have a lot of the shaming aspect of it coming out of the, sort of puritanical culture and whatnot. And then the other side of it is you have a real lack of research for specifically for women's issues, women's bodies. And it, I mean, because of the work that I do and my interests and where I go, I understand that. And it's become more and more apparent to me over the years, like how little of that research and education that we have. speak to the lack of women's studies in that.
Definitely, right, and it's really, we say women, we mean, like, people of a female sex or a female mostly sex because, again, a lot of bodies are diverse. You cannot
Right.
actually tell, at a glance, like, someone's hormone situation or their chromosomes, right? So, baby comes out, it has either what looks like mostly a vulva or mostly a penis, and then I don't know how much if your audience, if you've ever interviewed or talked about genital reconstructive surgeries that they'll do on infants or small children in order to assign a gender, thinking that this will be easier.
Mm,
But what can happen is the body changes, goes through puberty, hormone changes, and sometimes bodies will change against like the surgery. Like they're like, why does it hurt to urinate? Why is this moving? Why is my skin stretching? So really what you're supposed to do when a body comes out, if it doesn't look like one or the other, you leave it alone.
yeah.
You let the adult pass as or the person pass as they want, grow into their body. If they want to have a surgery later, people can do that. But even just like trying to put people into boxes. So with all of that aside, we're talking gender versus sex. Mostly, yeah, people of the female, mostly sex. If you have a vulva or vagina, the research is way behind or doesn't exist, or they're doing things like testing birth control on male bodies or something. Don't quote me on that, but there's so many products where it's like, this is for women, but it was actually
Oh,
tested only on males.
right.
Like, we
I,
live in a
I have read some of the
society.
I've read some of that research. It's like,
Right.
the Lord,
Yeah, what the hell?
apples and
Um,
oranges.
Right. So, and this comes to it's like, well, how did this happen? What are the whys for this? And so we look at the people historically in this country, and then where did they come from? Europe, mostly,
Hmm.
are men, males in charge who had land, money, property, resources. And so there's a subjugation that continues to happen of everyone who is not. And when you put people into boxes like man versus woman, even, you're saying who can do the work and be at the table and vote versus who can stay home and take care of the kids and not get paid. So we've, a big part, I'm glad you mentioned gender and also purity culture. Gender, if it were allowed to be as natural and diverse as it can be, it would be a lot harder to control people based on what they look like or what they're supposed to be doing in society. So that's one of the ways, if you're really committed to feminism, you will look around to see like how diverse bodies really are and all of the ways that we can learn from that and embrace differences. Right. So I have no love for transphobes. I will say right here.
Yeah.
I don't, and I'm also like, I am of a female sex. I have given birth. I've had my hormones tested. I menstruate regularly. So I'm not intersex by any regard, but I am of a non binary or gender expansive identity. So, this stuff is complicated. I don't mind if anyone calls me a woman. I definitely move through the world as a woman quite often. It's, drag is fun. I get dressed up for the strip club 3 nights a week and perform femininity.
Right.
Mhm. But not to get too away from the point, but yeah, so people have been very disconnected purposefully from the erotic, from the natural, from the diverse.
Well, I mean, one of the things too, and thank you for bringing all of that in and together and being able to speak about it, so succinctly. And
Try.
what we're
We try.
drink a lot of coffee and just
For the
talk.
rest, yeah, there's editing.
But the yeah, the limited vision and view that we have of humanity, our bodies, and sexuality and gender, um, really creates just a huge amount of separation and conflict. It's one of the things that I see. I have this quote about the erotic from Audre Lorde. I sent you that. I sent you.
Mhm. I
It's a
reviewed.
chapter from a book. I didn't realize that it was a chapter from a big reader on um, sexuality and all the things that we were just talking about. But she says, in touch with the erotic, I become less willing to accept powerlessness, or those other supplied states of being which are not native to me, such as resignation, despair, self effacement, depression, and self denial. And, for me, what, and putting it in, the bigger context of this particular article and then the larger context of the reader and her work in general. But, you know, for thousands of years, it seems like we have repressed, suppressed, shut off our natural tendencies to connect sensually in intimacy into our bodies. And it's been
Mhm.
this, kind of, I almost call it a kink. It's like this perverse thing. Let's shut down the one thing that really creates life and gives us passion and allows us to create and enjoy and feel and be here so so deeply here in this world. And so it just feels like what you're talking about really you know
Mhm.
is addressing that issue.
It's I reviewed the Audre Lorde. So this was part of a paper, it looks like, that was presented.
It was part of a book, like a textbook for some studies. I
Okay,
can't remember exactly where it came from, but it's a whole book with lots and lots of people.
it says was later published. So originally a paper presented at a conference on the history of women in 1978, and then later published as a chapter in Sister Outsider, 1984. So this is a discussion around pornography and eroticism, which is also really interesting because she is, for legitimate reasons in those contexts at that time,
Mhm,
anti-pornography. And she says, in a way that I do believe I agree with, she says that pornography emphasizes sensation without feeling. Yes, because when I'm making pornography, it's to make money.
mhm,
And so what people are seeing is more important to me than what I'm actually feeling. Because if I want to have sex to feel good, I will not have the camera on. So, but she's a black lesbian who wrote this in the 70s and the 80s. So, why was porn so problematic and not an option or a good option to her?
mhm,
Because it was made by and for mostly white men to consume and view. And so not compassionate, not woman centered or focused at all. So her criticisms are contextually very legitimate. And yet, women, feminists, will still use her arguments to say why porn is bad overall. And so this is where we see that some of the nuance is so, so important because how amazing can erotic media be when black lesbians do get to make it by and for themselves, right? Queers get to make it, trans folks get to make it, kinky people get to make it. Um, the consumers are going to be the people you can get the most money from due to reach or what they can afford. So a lot of the buyers are still going to be hetero focused men.
mhm.
And so that's why a lot of content creation still focuses on them as the viewer. So capitalism injects a whole different layer into the erotic, absolutely. And people need to make money to survive. So sometimes we do, I just want to point out there's a differentiation where people are like, oh, this feminist writing's so good, porn bad.
Right. Yeah. And that, I actually thought a little bit about sending that to you
I'm glad
specifically
you did.
as, it does sort of demonize porn in some ways. And I have told people for years, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with porn. Maybe it's how it's being used, or again, like you're speaking to, who's producing it and why, and then there's obviously the shadow side of any of that kind of work as well, which
Capitalism.
capitalism. And then yeah, well, yeah, you can run it back in trafficking and
Right,
all
which is more
that's
prevalent when you try to criminalize the erotic media. Right. Right.
Or again,
Right.
going back to, prohibition, the bathtub gin that people would go blind from and die from because it was not made,
Right.
made illegally.
Right.
I mean,
Imagine you run a bar, the whole family runs a bar, and then suddenly the government says you cannot do this anymore. So you're either going to entirely upend and try to reconfigure your life based on what is geographically and like literally available to you, or you're going to keep doing what you already know how to do, hopefully under the radar or paying off the authorities. And no shit, that's what happens.
it's happening all the time. Yeah.
Right. When some folks are surprised and disappointed to hear that, so New Zealand decriminalized prostitution laws over 20 years ago, I believe is
Australia did too. Yeah.
Australia. Yeah. New South Wales has had it for a while. I think it was like 2003 or 2009. I could be mixing those. I used to have it more spot on. Pardon me this morning. But one of the agreements to decriminalizing prostitution, at least in New Zealand, is they would do follow-up studies on the workers' health and
Mhm.
wellness and impacts. Okay. So when they decriminalized prostitution, a lot of people who were working in prostitution when it was illegal, they stayed in it because they already had the skill set, they had the clients, they know how to do it. And also, folks were disappointed that they didn't see a reduction in outdoor workers. They literally just didn't want to see prostitutes on the street. It's not that they cared about them, they just didn't want to see it. But
Right.
meanwhile, some of these chicks are like, nah, like I still got my game. Like, why would I stop?
Right.
So, because some people are going to prefer to hustle that way, or it's what they know, and that's their autonomy. And that having a few clients quickly and with no problems is gonna be way more attractive than working minimum wage for 40 hours a week to some people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, that just kind of brings me to another question is like, what do you think is most misunderstood about sex work, And what kind of harms do those misunderstandings bring, you think?
So, a lot of people think, again, that trying to prevent workers and clients from interacting is helpful in some way.
Hmm.
It's not when you're making someone's activities to survive more difficult. Um, a lot of folks who are well-intended don't understand or know the history of the unintended or intended side effects. I don't even want to say consequences because that would make it sound fair. So, if you live in a place where it is illegal to facilitate prostitution activities, what does that mean? Does that mean that if you rent an apartment to someone you suspect or find out is a sex worker, well, are you a facilitator now because you've provided housing? In some places, yes. And so actively, landlords will kick people out because if where they live, they could also be charged with a crime, facilitating prostitution, or drive a car for them, a cab, Lyft, like let them use your phone in a circumstance. So a lot of times people don't want to, even if they see someone's hurt or being robbed or might need help, they're
Right.
not going to want to get involved at all. So that's why some places will have like safe harbor provisions or good Samaritan laws where they say, if you're reporting this other crime, we won't pursue you if you're currently engaged in something that's currently illegal.
Hmm.
So that is not entirely helpful because a lot of people don't know what the good Samaritan laws would be where they live. I ask everyone to consider if they know that right now. What would be your liability?
I don't know what it is here, honestly.
Right, right. In Portland, they made some safe harbor reporting provisions for sex workers in like 2019. Most people I know don't know that. I only know that because I was attending community meetings at the police station at the time, which most people aren't going to want to feel safe to do. So, right. So, there's just one of the biggest misunderstandings is that trying to interrupt or criminalize sexual sale activities is helpful. If you want people to be safer, you will give them access to clinics and screening so they can get condoms, get an IUD, get vaccines, like nobody wants to acquire, let's say, any kind of hepatitis or
Yeah.
HPV, it's recommended you do it 13 and up, get a lot of your shots. So, like, if you want people to protect themselves and they know how, they will. If you don't want people to be doing dangerous criminalized work, we could offer them more job opportunities. So, this is stuff like for youth or people in domestic violence situations or people who lack shelter. Like, they need places to live and work to do. Otherwise, they are vulnerable to someone who says, yeah, I got a couch you can sleep on, but you just got to do this thing for me.
Hmm.
This is
Right.
how, right. That is how unsafe situations start and continue and stay in perpetuity.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. So when it's illegal, when there's no safe harbor, then it opens up people to actually being harmed more.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah, exploitation, yeah. If you can't report your rape by a client or by your pimp, or by anybody because they're gonna be like, "Well, what were you doing?
that
What
right?
do you do for work?" There's a story that we tell, and it's true, and I've said it over and over, so forgive me if you've been a listener, you've heard this one before, but I have specifically a friend who is still in New Zealand. She's world traveled. She's told this story that she did have a client who stealthed her, sexually assaulted her. He removed the condom during the appointment.
Mm,
She was able actually to press charges, and she did go to the New Zealand police station, and the cop even said, the constable, or, pardon, whatever they're called over there, he said, "It doesn't matter what you do for work, no one should have done that to you." That would never happen in the States. It just simply wouldn't, because so many places, any kind of prostitution is illegal, either if you're paying for it or if you're trying to sell it, or both.
okay. Yeah, I mean, even if it outside of the prostitution or sex work world, trying to advocate for yourself uh that way, when would a woman have when would somebody
Yeah.
be able to go to an authority and say, "Hey, this happened to me," and would want to press charges on somebody for
Right.
assault in that way? I mean, it's hard enough
Not
even just to report rape, to say,
Mhm. Yeah, any kind of assault. Yeah, all those untested rape kits. That's another thing I wanna mention really quick, and we won't spend too much time on police because it's probably not fun for a lot of people, but a lot of money is misspent in police departments by doing surveillance or spy or arrest activities on sex workers or their clients. And the example I will use very specifically is Portland Police Bureau. About 95% of their anti-human trafficking fund money, their arrests are on people trying to pay for sexual services, which is anti-prostitution. It's not anti-trafficking. So
right,
they are getting their money for things like drones and surveillance material and squad cars to watch people ask for, a hand job or whatever. And then they arrest these men, and then they put their faces in the newspaper articles or online as engaging in human trafficking. Why? Because they're using that fund to target those people and prosecute them. And so then people say, wow, there's a lot of human trafficking in my community. That's not what's happening.
right.
It's anti-prostitution operations. And I also challenge people to, if you see a story about a human trafficking sting, look to see if there's any minors mentioned, and if there's not, then look to see what these people are charged with. And if it was any kind of solicitation of prostitution, you know that they are lying and it is not anti trafficking.
Well, then the traffickers are not out to, they're not putting themselves in positions to be surveilled as
It's
much as
really
they
actually
would.
harder to find the real bad guys when you are targeting the people who actually didn't like rob or rape me or try to
Right.
rip me off. So a lot of clients are pretty chill, actually. They just wanna feel good in their bodies and, like, do the thing and then move on.
Yeah, well, again, it comes back to that place where we've, moralized and repressed, our human natures, and so we can't find that necessarily even just in our day to day relationships, a lot of times, and um, so one of the things I do want to bring up, and you know, you can talk about this to the level that you want, but you are a mother and a parent. And so how has the work that you're doing affected the way that you parent or the way that you educate your child?
Yeah, so context appropriate is very key. So, what that looks like is when my kid was 2 or 3 and we drive past the strip club where I worked. That's the bar where mommy works. She talks to people for a living and dances to entertain them. Cool, said my child. Okay. Kids older and they're seeing some of my outfits, my like costumes, like sparkly stuff, neon stuff, like, wow, you never wear this around the house. What is this? I'm like, oh, this is some of my dancing costumes. And they were like, "Oh, cool." Like this whole nother side of you, mother. I didn't know you wore pink. Um, and so I said, "Yeah, I dance in." And then they were like, "Well, wait, it's kind of like underwear." And I said, and again, I think the kid was like 6, 7, 8. These are a series of conversations. So just to recap, and I said, "Yeah, I do actually dance in my underwear or fancy costumes or sometimes naked." And my kid said, "Naked? What?" And I said, "Yeah, well, you notice how in our society, most of the time, most people are wearing clothes, right? Except for like a special occasion or circumstance, like maybe you're taking a bath, or what was the other thing I said? Or you're going to the beach and you wear a swimsuit. So I dance, we dance naked and people pay us money because it's a special occasion and bodies are interesting and they're grateful to see something interesting." My kid was like, "Oh, cool." No big deal, right? Okay. So I think my kid was about 11 when they told me that they had told a few of their friends at school in the playground, like, "What does your mom do? What does your dad do?" "My mom's a stripper." And that could be really endangering to my kid or me, depending on where we live. Luckily, we live in Portland. A few of the staffers at my kid's school are familiar with my online work. Okay. And they told me in a really boundaried, polite way. So I'm just telling you, like, it's different everywhere you go. For me, I have more safety and visibility, which is like part of my choices. Right. But so my kid was like proud of me because they're like, "Yeah, she gets to wear cool costumes. People come to see her. She's really strong." And then she like buys me snacks in the morning with cash. So like, and the concern is like, well, are you glamorizing it? And it's like, well, again, age appropriate. So my kid also sees me really tired with my body sore or kind of injured,
Mhm.
or low energy. Um, and parenting experts, people who know more about child development than me, they will tell you that you should try to minimize what you vent to your kid about regarding money and your work because they can't control any of it.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'm also going to be mindful of that and not be like, "Yeah, I had a terrible night last night." Like, so it's on me to show up in boundaried ways. Like, I don't leave, like, I can't even think of an example, like my sex toys laying out all over the place. I don't have my heels in the middle of the floor, like, for the kid to trip on. Like, it's in a box, it's away, they know it exists. There's no sensationalism around it.
Right.
When my kid got, let's see, I wanna say it was COVID times, so it was about 9, 10, and the clubs weren't open. I was making a lot more, porn online and doing webcam appointments and also filming myself dancing, and I remember I was editing a video, and the way my office work room is set up, like, I can see someone coming for a ways, and also my back's to the wall. So we've minimized the chance that they'll see anything, me naked or doing anything, sexual. However, they did almost sneak up on me once, and I said, "Stop. Stop where you are." And they were like, "Why?" And I said, "There's video of me naked on the computer. I'm working." And they were like, "Oh, okay." And they backed up. So they know that mom is a nude model at this point, that I've been published naked on the internet for a long time. They know that mom has video material of me being sexual with people that I have chosen to film with.
Mhm.
that I made money from. So they know that, and it seems to cause zero problems. What I've noticed is as my kid has and the kids around them have matured into puberty, um, sexual health class, my kid gets frustrated at the lack of maturity of the others around them.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine.
Right? So I'm like, this is the gift I have given you. Like, you don't get Twitter pated or uncomfortable if there's like a graph of a penis on, but you get annoyed that the boys and the girls or whoever around you is tee hee ha ha around stuff.
Exactly, right. And
Right.
unfortunately, that, like, 8th grade humor, tittering behind the hand is just it, indoor. I mean, I'm 60 and, I still have people around me that, you know, that's what that's what happens. You say something about anything that is remotely sexual, and it's like, "Whoa,"
Just out of, yeah, off the rails. Yeah. Yeah. It's unavoidable. Yeah.
Right.
So I have definitely, and there's not a lot of guidance for stuff like this for parents. So I hear from parents a lot that say, thank you for giving me some kind of a metric or framework to talk to my kid about this. But really, just like keep it simple, consider what they actually need to know versus what
Mhm.
they don't. Um, if your kid has questions, you can also ask them, well, what do you think first? So they can sometimes tell you, you can fill in the gaps. And there is a little bit of writing about this. A lot of it existed before me on places like Tumblr, and is like long gone or whatever. But like Juniper Fitzgerald, I believe is her name, co-authored a book. God, it's something called like, I'm gonna look it up, but it's something about moms doing jobs. And it's just like all the different kinds of work that mommies might do, and also
Mhm.
including sex work. Uh,
Juniper Fitzgerald.
yeah. How mamas love their babies. Okay. Juniper Fitzgerald and Elise Peterson. Yeah. So just showing all the things that mommies do, introducing the idea of bodily labor. So
That's
that's a cutesy little picture book.
Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit before too, is the need for education and the normalizing of sexuality, eroticism, our bodies, functionality of it, and the lack of that in almost every culture. I mean, I've lived in lots of different places around the world, and it's not something that's ubiquitous in any culture that I've been in. There is, yes, the intimacy, the privacy, and that kind of a thing that you hold with your partner and love and all that. But sex is a human function. It's like shitting. It's like it's any of the things that we do. It's like it needs to be spoken about openly and um, normalized. Yeah, normalized was the word I was looking for. That's um, So, that, it also kind of following through with the education piece, what do you wish that, more therapists and coaches or healthcare, providers understood about sex work and intimacy?
Mm, it is helpful for all of them to consider that they have blind spots. We all have blind spots for what we do not know. And also, media is not real life. So, again, most of the media up until this point, and still to this point, that is about sex work has been made by and for people who do not do sex work. So it's actually pretty tough for me to like watch a show or a movie where it has any scene having to do with like a strip club or an escort or something because I'm just like, Jesus Christ, that's not how that goes.
Right. Yeah.
uh, so I think, and I say to people who are in harm reduction fields, therapy, counselor, nurse, whatever, you can have curiosity. Please be aware of your judgment. Just consider that people will choose different things And just because you think it's gross or weird doesn't mean that it necessarily is. I like to say that I could never work in death industries, and I can never be a kindergarten teacher. Both of those sound terrible to me. But do I love that people do those things? Yes, I really appreciate it. um, Also, I think a lot of people are impacted by their own feelings of jealousy or monogamy. So some folks have fear about their partner, cheating on them or being aroused by someone else. A lot of people are aroused simply by thinking of their partner being aroused by someone else, which is a natural, normal part of life. It will happen. There's different ways people can navigate things. So, and I think lastly, so understanding that people are having different perspectives and choices and things that sound attractive to them or not. Lastly would be view any kind of work through the lens of labor rights. So, w- zooming out, broadly speaking, that is the workers should be able to speak about what they need
Hmm.
and ask for what will keep them, more considered, safer, healthier, better paid, more mentally well. Nobody with no experience in a field should be creating the laws, rules, regulations for how other people operate. Usually that's what happens to sex workers. People think, oh, we need regulations for these poor workers that don't know how to take care of themselves. Let's create a bunch of rules about now they have to get permits or certain tax forms or something. And it's like, when has control by outside parties, larger government parties, or for, other institutions been good for the workers? Never.
Never, not once. And I mean, I've been in relationship with um, sex workers as well. In deep, intimate relationships, and one of the first things that I recognized was that very strong people, strong personalities, but very capable of doing whatever it is that they wanted to do, needed to do, taking care of themselves. And there was a community formed around this. This was another question, and I think something you have actually talked about before. But there's uh, the beautiful community that forms up when sex workers come together and support each other. And I don't know what your experience with any of that, having community with
Mm,
fellow
r-
workers.
right. I'm reflecting on so many years. I'm really grateful that the Oregon Safer Workers Coalition came together as the Oregon Sex Workers Committee due to the election, changing attitudes, Puritanism coming back around. We changed the name because it was becoming an obstacle for some people that didn't want to work with us, unfortunately. So I'll say the fundraisers and Portland Pride events that we've had a booth the last couple years have been so heart opening. I cry every time. It feels very, very full to have so many strangers tell me, thank you for being here, or I did sex work and, I don't tell that many people, or, whatever, or I knew somebody or my partner or whatever, or I was trafficked, or I was trafficked and then I did sex work. So many people will say, thank you for just existing to
Mhm.
have information and history and resource and just ways for people to get together. So that is pretty amazing. And also I think when you're when you're dealing with a lot of freelancers who are working stigmatized jobs in creative fields and in touch, you also get a lot of main character energy for better or worse. So there can be some real infighting, beef, conflicts. Uh not all sex workers are going to be friends. A lot of people do things differently. We could talk about hierarchies in in the club, online, between different fields. I have definitely heard things, being in a strip club dressing room, I've heard things such as, well, I'm not a prostitute, I'm a dancer. Or, I don't make porn, I only fuck my man. And it's like, well, I do both of those things and we're all here together. What's up? Like, do you hate me now, or do you just feel stupid for saying something like that? So, and also to like a lot of other people not in sex work at all, we're all the same. Or you're right, they're agreeing with your shitty hierarchy, fine. So there's definitely stuff like that. You know, we have to talk about the problems in community so that we can
Right.
address them and do them less. But it's a mix. Yeah. There's definitely some beautiful, beautiful times. And also you do get infighting and lateral violence when people are struggling for resources or misunderstood or dealing with their own shame. Some workers also have their own shame to navigate because of the society that they live in that tells them, you know, you're sinful, sick, yucky for doing this. So that can be interesting too to see how other workers navigate shame or express about it. That can look like client shaming, where they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're so gross, you know, like who would pay for this? And it's like, well, you supplied it. So does that make you feel weird? Or like I like to try to believe in my product, even if I'm doing something that feels unnatural and absurd, but someone's paying for it and they're getting off on it. I'm like, well, here is some kind of value.
Right.
So, and also, but I have choice where I don't often have to engage in things that make me feel like they're crossing a personal boundary. So there's just a lot of moving parts. And I hope I brought up some things for people to consider.
I have a quick question for you. Would you be against seeing this podcast reach more people who could really benefit from it? If you're still listening, the chances are you've already received some valuable takeaways. Subscribing literally takes like 5 seconds, but it seriously helps us keep these conversations going. It's how we keep bringing in the guests whose stories provide the depth that you've come here for. So yes, I'm asking you to join the team. Hit subscribe, like, and share with somebody you know. And let's grow this thing together. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because everything that you mentioned there are things that I've witnessed or have felt or, come up against in either my own work or, the work with people that have been in sex work for 30, 40 years and still sort of having that sort of deep shame. And then I appreciate that you brought up that piece about shaming the client, shaming the people that are coming to you. I was like, that was one of my questions early on was like, well, why are you doing this if you just think that these people are pieces of shit or weak, they're weak or they're, right. No, I understand that piece, right? Absolutely. But what I'm saying is that having that sort of attitude towards the people that are coming to you seems a little, you know, detrimental to being able to really do the work well. That's all.
Yeah, it seems hard. Yeah, that seems harder to carry. And so that's something I also want to encourage people to explore.
Well, people get jaded in all kinds of jobs
Oh,
also.
for sure.
You know,
Definitely.
they get tired of
Definitely.
it. They're like, oh God, I don't want to do this again. Not
It's
today.
amazing. It's amazing how
Today.
quickly. Yeah. I like before I was doing any kind of let's say criminalized touch work. Before I had any ad listings anywhere and was pretty often getting contacted by total strangers for sexual services on a phone or in my inbox. I definitely used to be more fascinated by like escort forums where they would complain about the types of emails they get and like the neediness or the disorganization or just the random shit. And I used to be like, wow, that like damn, these escorts like really fucking hate these guys. Like it's annoying, but like damn, they really hate them. And then I started getting emails and texts like that where I'm like, damn, I
Yeah,
really fucking hate these guys. So it's like amazing how quickly the burnout can happen.
right.
And for what it's worth, if you can, I feel that pivoting between different kinds of work helps keep me fresh and a little less jaded and frustrated.
Yeah.
Because we're all ignorant sometimes. Like I've totally been that person ordering food where I'm like, I'm sure it's irritating the worker. Forgive me. I'm
Well,
sorry.
you were talking about the OSWC, and there's a particular program that you're heading up in that organization, right? That
Yeah. So I I was co-president. I'm now president. Our other co-president is working for another great organization. They focus more on trafficking support. That's the Cupcake Girls.
Okay.
So yeah, my good friend Valentine Bonbetti. So we split the role. I'm carrying more of the president role. So I oversee pretty much all operations of the org at this point. And that's like grants, social media, communications, banking. It feels like a lot, but it's a full-time commitment. And also separately, myself and another board member, we're creating an online class that anybody can take. And it's just to help you prevent or address STIs, specifically for anyone who's having sex. Again, whether you're paying for it or having it recreationally, it's kind of like just sex ed for adults that a lot of us didn't get, but with a focus on if you plan to be fucking, here's how we can do it more safely.
Right.
Yeah. And
Perfect.
this actually was formed based heavily on a lot of the conversations I was seeing in strip club dressing rooms where, for example, like an assault would a customer would assault a worker, and this could look like penetrating them with their fingers or with their mouth. And so the worker would be like, am I going to get something now? Am I going to catch something? Am I going to catch an STI or an STD? And so I would repeatedly explain, well, like, you might get an infection, like I've helped people wash their vulvas out in the sink while they're upset. Like, unfortunately, this is something people just do, is penetrate without asking. So this happened repeatedly. And I thought, what a nice opportunity just to make something available for anybody. You just take it online from the comfort of home. It'll be me narrating with links and slides and visuals and little quizzes so you can kind of see like what you're actually learning. There is also a free overdose prevention course on
Right.
on OregonSWC.org. That is, you can understand how to identify a potential opioid overdose, how to administer life-saving breathing, and also either injectable or air naloxone, and then follow up. And so you test your competency with that too in order to get a certificate. I think you have to do 80% or better. And so it's sliding scale or totally free. You can donate up to $20 to take it, or, take it for free. And that was in response to Stony, the person who developed that course. One of the loves of their life died by overdose a couple years ago. So it's really like the government's not doing, I would say, anything really to protect or help us, but now they're like actively harming us, like at a rate I don't recall in my lifetime. When I say us, I mean queer people. So I remember the AIDS panic and the HIV panic, and definitely the fentanyl crisis has been so mismanaged and people have been so blamed. And then they cut off, things like Adderall and pharmaceuticals. And so we're just seeing a lot of harm being done, and really people at the grassroots level are trying to prevent or address it. So thank you for asking about that. And you can find the overdose prevention course on OregonSWC.org. And my class is upcoming.
Well, I was reading through both of those and researching for this podcast, and they're very comprehensive.
Good.
And I will actually take both of those courses at some point
Yay. It
myself.
takes about an hour to take Stonies. I got mine. Yeah.
And I love the whole fentanyl thing is just, yeah, it's a travesty in this. And I've had people close to me, that have passed away because of,
Really?
yeah, it's
Yeah. It's hard to find. I'm sorry.
dating, yeah, to watch.
Oh God. Yeah. I'm so sorry. It's really quite one of the epidemics. Hmm.
Yeah, it's walking down the street, in San Francisco, and you just see the fentanyl fold, you're like, whoa, it's
Yeah.
tough to watch.
Yeah.
Well, what is giving you hope right now when it comes to sexuality and advocacy and intimacy culture?
There's a lot of people working very, very hard right now with art and entertainment that is educational or ethics focused and based. I think this is in response to the increased levels of authoritarianism that we're seeing with the Trump administration. Stuff like sending the National Guard into cities and threatening to do that in other places when it's totally unjustified. I am so tired of being told that where I live is on fire.
Right.
Like, actually, we do have
And
fires
the
in the
outside
Pacific
perception
Northwest.
of Portland is just kind of this, holy crap, but
I
unfortunately,
work I work in one of the actual, like, crime dense hotspots of the city, and I drive to all the quadrants, like, every week. I work in multiple counties. I see the city at 9 o'clock in the morning, I see it at 9 o'clock at night, I see it at 3 p.m., I see it at 3 a.m., like, it is not on fire. God.
right.
And I can't my parents won't listen because they watch Fox News, so,
I know that one.
Yeah. I'm like, "No,
I
we're at a
just,
dead end there." Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Good Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and when I'm ran into your profile on Instagram, and one of the things that I noticed about that is you actually bring up all of these issues. You talk about all of this stuff, but you also bring in this really um, wry, sometimes kind of ironic sense of humor. And that's one of the things that really attracted me. Like, I gotta talk to this gal because she's funny as fuck.
Thank you.
I mean,
I
and
do
and and smart. It's not just like that. Put on a
Thank
weird.
you. Yeah, no, I so someone can please take this idea. I'm not gonna do it. But I joked about hosting a podcast or a series of clips called like Feminist Killjoy because it's like, no, I'm here to say something that's like actually gonna be a downer, but it's historically accurate. Um, and sometimes when I do like jump into like a comment section, and not to be an antagonist, but really to be like, oh, actually, this is like a common, misrepresentation, or this actually isn't the case, blah, 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 correction. And then someone will inevitably say, you must be a lot of fun at parties. And I'm like, actually, 3 nights a week for like 15 years. Yeah, I am. I am entertaining.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I am
somebody
kind
thinks
of
I'm
funny.
funny. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I mean, if we can't laugh about it, right? I mean, it's horrible, sad, horrendous, but at the same time, God, we got to preserve some of our humanity, and humor is a way of educating. There's,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a tension release, if nothing else. And also sometimes it makes the hard stuff watchable.
that's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna see if I have energy to do this. To be quite honest, I think it'll be a good video if I can hit it correctly. But I got a really, um, very nicely delivered to me little paragraph of hate mail a couple days ago, and
Hmm.
it just like proves so many points of like what the problems are, and it's like so hateful that I think it might be kind of it sometimes things upset my audience. They're like, Elle, I'm so upset someone would talk to you like that. And I'm like, no, no, please don't be. I've already processed it. Like, that's what the video is, so I don't want to, I need to sometimes be like content warning on, what this person said to me that I kind of want to laugh about right now. So we'll see. You might see that one floating around. But, honestly, my dad was my biggest bully. So like I can handle like a verbal lashing.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the byproduct of a repressed, over-corrected child, like, you get a loudmouth entertainer, I guess.
I love it.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thanks, James.
there's some recognition. You just talked a little bit about your upbringing, and I also noticed there's a lot of content that has to do with religion, specifically Christianity and whatnot. And what it brings to mind is the question, like, how did you actually get into this work? And
Yeah.
what are some of the
What was the
pieces
segue?
that yeah.
I remember getting so pumped for, like, what am I gonna do the rest of my life when I was, like, 15 or so in my room, like, really just, like, staring out the window, like, the world is a big place, and I wanna do so many things, and I wanna, like, maybe I want to do this or maybe I want to do that. I want to be a teacher or a dancer or a comedian or a radio host or a scientist. And it's like, bitch, you can do all of it. You can, I mean, not all of it. Like, I don't know if you can have it all, but I just also really like and am interested by sex and sexuality. And so, I mean, I started working as a adult store clerk when I was 19. I was also working in a pharmacy. The pharmacy was too stressful and depressing. I preferred to work in the adult store, which was a different kind of stressful, but not depressing. That was like eye-opening in a different way. That's human
Right.
nature in different ways, right? Still the same clientele coming in and out, essentially, just somewhat no children in the adult store, which was nice, and then slightly less old people. Um, which was helpful for me at that age. I get along with elderly folks and they love me now, but when you're fresh out of high school, you just, don't interact with people the same way. So I worked in an adult store. I always, like, I was an early, like, erotically, like, fascinated child. I was a pretty constant masturbator. I liked written erotica. I would make my own doodles. I was so, like, it's funny, my mom just sent me a bunch of my journals from when I was a kid. She just sent them like 2 days ago. Okay, it's my birthday shortly. I'll be 39. And they start at 1995, so I was 9, okay? I am obsessed with boys and girls and who's talking and what they're wearing, and, like, I have it, like, documented. So, I think I just people are my special interest, and
Right.
sex is up there. So, after, like, seeing so much content, I'm like, "Well, crap, what if I wanted to make it?" Or, has there ever been a time where you're doing something and you're like, "God, this looks nice. I wanna
Hmm.
share this." Yeah, I wanna share this.
Oh
Or
yeah.
like, "Would someone pay for this?" Yes. So, yeah, I just when I worked retail up in Portland, when I moved up here for college with my first husband, shout out to my barber, Isaiah, still homies. Uh, and I said, "I think I wanna start, like, I think I want to start making more nude work, but I didn't know how." And then customers at the adult store would say, "You're so pretty and there's so many strip clubs. You should be a dancer." So it
Mm.
was a really easy place to apply when the recession was happening in 2008, 2009, and I couldn't get any other employment. My creepy boss at the adult store in Portland fired me because I told him not to cuss at me, essentially. So, it was the first time I'd ever been fired. I needed a job. Everyone's like, "Well, you should be a dancer." So, I very nervously applied to one club and got hired and stayed there for a long time and then branched out to others. But I really I had the interest and the curiosity, but I needed the little bit of motivation, I think, in a lot of the cases.
Mm.
Mhm.
That quite a story. It's just so fascinating to me, and I've talked to a number of people, that have gone into some form of intimacy coaching, sex work, prostitution, and just watching that transition, and almost to a one. They talk about their fascination with their bodies and sexuality from a very early age. I personally included in that.
Mhm.
Like one of the first things wrestling. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on with this thing?" You know?
Wrestling, yeah. Yeah.
And
I love a good grapple. Mhm.
yeah, exactly. And then,
Mhm.
being able to bring those skills actually to clients that are like, "I want something a little different. I wanna feel more. I don't wanna just, like, lay there," and
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing too, so,
I
um,
definitely think that some of my work is a calling, and I will definitely try to offer my best energy. And I will
mhm,
visualize like white light coming through my palms of my hands or my fingers or my chest, into like it feels good. And I'm trying to tap in, especially to the people that I think really deserve it. If you're a jerk, I'm not giving you my best energy, but uh and I think that just shows I'm taking it seriously to
mhm,
myself. Like once I realized I was doing that, or the time that I had a pregnant woman come to see me because she was going to give birth soon and she wanted me to hold her because she wanted some of my good energy, her words.
mhm,
I thought, "Oh, wow, other people are noticing how they feel. So I'm going to notice even more what I give to them.
Yes. Yes. Well, one of the things too, and we talked about this a little bit before we got on here, was one clip that I saw of you talking about working with clients, and I know this was done a while ago. And what was the name of it? It's like 60-second stripper
Stripper
stories, I think
stories.
it's called.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the one particular one, and it was just a short segment, like a minute and a half or something, and you're talking about um, working with clients and feeling that. Um, like they just needed to be held, like that person just wanted to be held, and, you got emotional in this, and it's really beautiful, and, that one of the things about intimacy work, and I'd like to have you talk about this a little bit more, is that as opposed to like a talk therapy, there's me over here and you over there kind of a thing, right? Or even massage therapy where there's not verbal interaction, generally speaking, this kind of work, the intimacy coaching and the intimacy work in general, brings all of that together, or has the opportunity to do that, right? So yeah, can you talk about that a little bit more? Like you were just saying how you would bring that energy through and project that into the session of the people, but what is that for you personally? How do you carry that after a session or just in your life? What has it taught you?
Mm, I'm usually mm, sometimes pretty tired. I'll be surprised at how tired I am after
Mhm,
a touch session. Also, a digital session where maybe I am talking and I'm not touching them at all, but specifically to the touch, I do I have a little private space where I do dominatrix work and separately also body rubs. Um, I am not a licensed massage therapist, but I am applying touch. So I have to be very specific so that the Oregon Massage Licensure Board doesn't come after me and try to fine
mhm,
me for doing unlicensed massage, which I am not doing. I do apply pressure and guided breathing and things. And I recently had a client tell me that I think he's had 2, maybe 3 sessions from me at this point, every few months. And he said that after a session, he can feel it, that he carries that good feeling for up to 2 weeks.
mhm, mhm.
So I thought, damn, I need to charge more. No.
Yes. Yes, for high.
He's a great tipper. So I feel very taken care of.
Good.
Yeah. So, but that was something that was significant. So that to me really is motivating because, well, if you're feeling that good, then I will keep bringing that best intention because I don't want to lose that. Um, Also, that saying, like, don't toss your pearls to the swine or whatever.
Mhm,
There are times when I have had a client that I could tell was not appreciating what I was giving them and was probably not going to appreciate what I was giving them, and that this was going to be a short session and we were going to go our separate ways, or they were going to try to push on me for more. There's definitely been times where I thought, well, I'm going to not try so hard, or I'm going to stop giving you my white light energy because I feel like you're sucking it out of me like a
yeah,
vampire, you know? So that's an interesting thing in terms of touching people. There's people that when they touch me, and now I'm thinking more in a lap dance setting, and a lot of places are no touch at all, but if I'm in a contact club, which you cannot tell by looking, it's just what's negotiated usually or what's
mhm,
commonplace in the private spaces. There are people who want to give to me with their touch, and by that I mean like offer me a nice neck rub or
mhm,
really feel my scalp or be gentle if they're going to touch my breasts. And then there's people who just want to take, which is, feels like scratching or just like random movement of your hands and you're not even feeling it. Some people will just start like humping the air to where it's like, okay, obviously you have a lot of energy and there's a disconnect because that's not what is happening right now. So I think it's also just being aware of like where your client is at. And if they
Mhm.
are patiently receiving the touch, I feel a lot better about, providing the touch. But if they're thrashing around or arguing with me or feel like they're trying to get away from it, then I'm like, okay, do you even like this? I'm thinking now specifically of every once in a while there's like a submissive client or someone who says that they want impact from me, either like cock and ball torture, CBT, or something like that, step on my balls or whatever. And they're like, yeah, just do whatever. You can go as hard as you want. And it's
Right.
like, you don't actually mean that though.
Exactly.
Promise you. Like, I'm not a gambling man, but I would bet my life on you don't actually want me to do whatever I want to do to you right now because I will poke you in the eye and leave. Like, I'm not emotionally invested
Mhm.
in some of this. If you're not going to be clear, it makes it really hard for me to deliver anything to you. So, yeah, that's something I guess like people who've been doing the work for a long time may already know plenty of this. Like, don't, throw your pearls to the swine. But new providers, I think sometimes are like, oh, I want the client to like me. Do
Mhm.
they like me? Are they liking me? And it's like, you're doing just fine, or you're going to do too much worrying about it.
Right.
So don't worry about it. You can't win them all either.
Yeah, and I mean that, like you said, that's an experiential thing. Over time you develop the skills to be able to see that. And I'm wondering, are you familiar with Betty Martin's work, The Wheel of
Hmm.
Consent?
A little bit. Hmm.
Do you bring any of those kinds of skills into your work, like BDSM, the negotiation skills, rack, and all those other ones?
What was RAC? Risk aware consensual kink.
Yeah.
Yeah. Risk aware consensual.
And then there's BDSM, which is boundaries, desires, situation, or
That I'm not familiar with.
and outcome. It's not outcome, it's something else, what they
Mm,
want to see at the end of it. But anyway,
okay.
mostly what I'm, asking about is the communication piece. There's always an intake, there's always, some questions, like, and somebody saying like, I just want you to do whatever you want to me, and helping somebody figure out what it
What do
is
you want?
want,
Yeah.
and their previous experience, like how would they, what do they have to compare that to? That's, I don't know how much that comes into play in the work you're doing or not, or any of the
Yes.
work you're doing.
Right. So I will say, in terms of sex work things, entertainment things, you're always going to know when the session or the appointment starts. You'll know when I'm starting and you'll know when I'm going to finish, like how long the expectation is, whether that's 3 songs or an hour or 90 minutes or until you come or until I come or whatever. Um, and you're always going to know the cost. I don't like to do surprises on the clients because that can upset people, and I don't wanna
Mhm.
deal with a heightened level of conflict. Um, so I think that's also why I have people who will come see me consistently because they trust me and know what they're going to get in those regards, yeah. If I'm doing any kind of impact play, I will ask the sub if they have a safe word they like. A lot of times with mine, I think I get a lot of newbies though. A lot of times mine do not. And so I will suggest to them that if something is feeling so intense or they want me to stop, that they call red. Or if they need a pause or a check in or it's starting to get intense, then yellow.
Right.
That's worked well for some people. Uh, I have also noticed though that, and I relate to this, and I've had partners do this also. sometimes people don't wanna tell you when they can't take anymore because they don't wanna disappoint you, or they don't
Mhm.
wanna
Right.
disappoint themselves, or, they want more marks or whatever. And so it's also people get really excited, submissives will get really excited and kinda let themselves go, so it's my job to sometimes be aware that someone needs to slow their breathing,
Mhm.
or you haven't drank water in like 5 hours.
Mhm.
Or I see you moving away from my impact. Do you want yellow? Like if I see someone's trying to like, get away from it, I'm like,
Yeah, the check-in
so
are very
right. So I'll
important.
do those kind of check-ins with having that awareness. And yeah, I think that's pretty much that's pretty much the essential list. Maybe forgetting something else.
Well, and there's your private work or what you're doing, but then we pull out a little bit, and maybe I'm leading the question a little bit, but in the bigger picture of intimacy and what's happening in our culture and what's happening with between people. Um, where does communication and what kind of communication comes into play there? And what do you feel like is the most impactful for creating a safer environment, an environment of deeper trust and revelation, where people feel like, yeah, I can talk about my
Hmm.
desires, my sexuality, my fears, whatever it is.
I think a lot of people are gonna, rightfully so, be nervous the first time or the first few times they do anything. So I think consistency is really key. So for me as a provider, that looks like being on time, as much as possible, remembering details about my client, following up with them after. Yeah, I guess besides everything that we already mentioned, I don't know. I guess I'm kinda stumped on the question. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like
Well, I'm just thinking like, even outside of the actual provider world and in our everyday interactions, or if you take it into, let's say, some kind of kink or BDSM play, or, just couples
mm,
in general coming together and, trying to discover these things about each other.
oh, yeah.
Those kinds of, interactions that, like we started talking on earlier, there's so much repression, so much moralizing and trying to control that people have shut their voices down. They don't even know how to talk about desire, for instance, or boundaries,
Mm.
or, those kinds of things.
I think I kinda touched on this earlier. I think I said the word considered. I want people to feel like they're considered no matter
Mhm.
who they are. So that could look like when I'm at the strip club stage and I'm going to, like, incorporate an audience member, I might lean in and ask, like, "Can I borrow your glasses?" Or, "Can I lean on your legs?" Rather than just, like, climbing on top of them. A lot of people don't go to the stage because they've had a bad experience. They're like,
Mhm.
"The stripper broke my glasses," or, "She put her butthole on my nose," which, like, I didn't want, or, something like that, or, like, "Her shoes, like, stabbed me," like, so some people have legitimate, like,
Dangerous
discomfort.
game up there.
It's fucking I've seen some stuff. I've seen a nose get broken or 2, like, you got alcohol and heels and adrenaline, and it's dark, and yeah.
It
Shaking
happens.
ass. And yeah, so I will ask people that kind of consideration before I touch something of theirs, lean on them. And I say that now, it's funny because previously, like, what I I haven't done this in years, but if someone was being an asshole at my stage, I would definitely just like take their drink and then drink it in front of them. So like a
There you
real
go.
boundary cross, like a
Yeah,
real middle finger, but that's me playing God and deciding that we're not interacting nicely anymore. For the most part, I'm checking in with people by default, before I give them the lap dance, or I might say I actually say this almost every time, I think, unless I've had them, like, very recently, but I'll say, "Do you have anywhere you don't like being touched? Any healing tattoos, sunburn, broken bones?" And I get usually 3 responses, which is, "Oh, thank you for reminding me. I did just have a surgery here. Don't sit on my knee," or, "Oh, I don't like my ears being touched." Or the response is, "No, I don't have anything, but nobody's ever asked me that. Thank you."
Right.
And
Yeah.
this is often from big-bodied men,
Hmm.
that are men are not often made to feel pretty, handsome, or significant to their bodies, in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. Like, especially the average, let's say dad bod guy where he's like, "Aw, no one's told me I have nice eyes. I just think about my beer belly or whatever, my beard." So there's a lot of like parts that could be eroticized on cis men bodies that we just
Mhm.
totally ignore, right? But I will ask, does anybody have any like tattoos or whatever? The third response I will get is something that tends to be pretty ableist and coming from, I think, a place of insecurity where they're like, "Do I look disabled?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, not at this time. Like,
Right.
we all get hurt sometimes, or not everyone's going to walk forever." So sometimes
Mm.
people get a little annoyed, like, how dare I ask them that? But that's like a really small percentage. Mostly people are like, "Yes, I do have a thing I don't want you to lean on." Or, "No one's ever asked me that." So I think just showing consideration in a really simple way is so nice. I'm also one of those people where if I walk through a crowd, I say, "Excuse me," and "Pardon me." I don't just like barrel through people, which I'm finding out is still pretty common. People will just like step around me and I'm like,
Right.
"Okay." I
Well,
don't
that's
know.
one of the things I remember learning, going and living in Central America, people are much more polite in that way. Uh, but I love that concept of just consideration. That's a really kind of basic thing,
Mhm.
doesn't get used often enough, I believe.
Thank you. I agree.
Well, we're coming towards the end of this. I know you have a stop time, and we've covered a lot of things, but I have a few questions to sort of wrap this up. And one of them is, what do you still feel for you personally is taboo? What kind of
Mm.
feels alive for you,
What is taboo or what for me?
or a taboo that feels alive for you? Something.
Do play in consensual non-consent for myself sometimes, so people may call that rape role play. I don't I don't do it every time, but I definitely enjoy, like, a good struggle between me and my partners, and, we know
See
how to.
that?
Yeah, yeah,
You got a strong body.
thank you. I'm pretty stout, actually, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I currently attract bisexual men that are either gym rats or into, like, martial arts or something, so I'm like, "Hey, let's
Awesome.
arm wrestle." Um, yeah, so we're good with tapping, but I will usually initiate rougher activities, and I'm also kind of a brat, so there's
Tracks.
yeah, yeah, that tracks, yeah, exactly. So, it's kind of funny, yeah, I could say a lot right now. Uh, so that sometimes surprises people because every once in a while, someone will say something about, like, their fears or their concerns about they don't call it CNC, but, something, like, themed like that, which totally is fair, and if it's not for you, it's not for you, but let's acknowledge how many people really have healed, like, their own survivor stories by being able to play in a theme and just have a different outcome.
Well, that's a piece we didn't actually really talk about. Maybe we can come back to this at another time, but the healing part of intimacy work. The place where people, like, we just mentioned, where they get to explore something that, has been taboo forever, or they've had experiences and they, need to work that out through the body. There's I could personally do a whole a couple of hours just talking about those experiences personally, and then with clientele too. So I
Well, then
imagine
maybe you shall.
Maybe I shall. Yeah, maybe I'll get invigorated someday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like talking to people. That always, this kind of interaction is always
I
the
can
best
tell.
for
You're
me.
delightful to talk to.
And you too. It's awesome. Well, Elle, it has just been lovely talking to you, and we let's see if we can get a little more redundant here. But um, is there anything that you would like to leave this audience, anybody watching this, with any words of wisdom or
Yeah. I really encourage people to ask themselves if they also are interested in making their lives and their sex lives a little safer or a little more fun.
Mhm.
Because there's lots of ways to do that. And why wouldn't you?
And why wouldn't you?
Mhm.
Yeah, why
And
wouldn't you? Come on.
yeah.
Missing a whole huge piece of our humanity when we don't do that. Um, so where can listeners find you? More about your work and you.
Yeah, definitely. So find me. I'm very active if you're on Instagram. I'm there daily at stripper writer. Those were my two main gigs when I made that handle. And stripperwriter.com is my website. You can see where I'm dancing. You can see some of the other stuff I'm doing, fundraising. You can find my porn, my erotica. Uh, the podcast is They Talk Sex Podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple, all over the place. TheyTalkSex.com. And yeah, if you're in Portland and you want to get involved with a local nonprofit, then Oregon Safer Workers Coalition is happy to hear from you.
Very good. Yeah, I took a look at the stripperwriter.com website. And it's very beautiful.
Thank you. It's an
Yeah.
anchor spot for
And there's a
stuff that I
lot
can't
of
put.
information there. I'm telling you,
There's
anybody
a lot of
interested,
text.
there's a lot of information there. And so a lot to explore. Well, Elle, thank you very much. And hopefully you'll come back on our show another time. And maybe someday I'll get up to Portland and actually meet you face to face.
Yeah, I can
I
tell you
owe
some cool
Charla,
spots to eat.
yeah, a common friend that, I owe her a visit too at some point.
Oh, Charla Hathaway. Yeah, she's a
She's
hoot.
amazing. Yeah. All right.
Thanks, James.
Thank you.